I love the graphics package for this series. Everything we do up here gets created by men and women who are part of our church. So under the leadership of Isabel, great storytelling team. And I want to tell you this. Give Isabel props for sure. I know you love behind the scenes, but she's somewhere in this room. She is somewhere in this room. Guys, my name is Ben, and I'm thrilled that you're here today. If today is day one for you, or if you're part of the few of us that have been around from day one until this date, we're really glad that you're here, and I'm especially excited about what we're starting today, September 15th. You know, all of us know who we want to be, what we want to do, who we want to become known for. But oftentimes, tell me if this is true, we never become who we set out to be. We don't do what we intended to do, and for whatever reason, we cease to become known for what we had hoped to be known for. Does that work like that in anybody else's life besides me? I mean, I am awesome when it comes to goals. Anybody else? Like, I have killer intentions, right? But the stuff that actually gets lived out oftentimes is different than what I had hoped would come out in my life. And you know, when this stuff goes down like this, we act like it's just a mystery. We just act like it's a mystery. Today, we're kicking off this brand new series called Bring It Out. And here's the principle we will discover over and over again in this series. While we can't control everything, we have much to do with what comes out in our lives. While you and I don't have control of everything, we have so much to do with the stuff that actually comes out into our lives. But we act like it's a mystery, right? We're like, how does this happen? Like, whenever you don't have present what you hoped would be present, when what you wished was present is actually absent, you just kind of throw your hands up and like, why is the universe against me? Anybody ever feel that way? Like, you have specific things you want to do in your vocation, but for whatever reason, it just never happens. We have healthy, intimate relationships we want to be involved in, but so far, we've just been unlucky in the relational department. Don't raise your hands at that. We are not a dating service. But if you meet someone at church, I do get a finder's fee. 3% of all future earnings combined, and I'm here for you. But you get a spouse. We even have goals for our own character development, don't we? But then we're just like, well, I guess I'm going to be deficient in that area the rest of my life. Who knows why? And we just throw our hands up, guys, and we act like it's just a mystery. But what I want to tell you today, and this is the title of my talk for today as we kick off the series. Here's the title. It's not a mystery. Say that with me. It's not a mystery. And when you discover that so much of what comes out in my life and in your life, it's not a mystery, there's both bad news and good news. Let's get the bad news first. Anybody? The bad news is this. If it's not a mystery, the bad news is that I'm somewhat responsible. I'm somewhat responsible. The good news is, if it's not a mystery, perhaps there are things I could do differently and affect changes that I want to see happen in my life. That's good news. And I think that's what we're going to discover. I hope you will lean in and not, today in the series, it's not about, oh my gosh, it's not a mystery, I'm at fault, period. It's about, wow, it's not a mystery. Let's see if God has written anything into the scriptures about what I can do to bring out different things than what I'm bringing out currently in my life. The stuff that comes out in our lives, it's not mysterious. There's a reason why it happens. And the stuff that comes out in our lives, it's called something over and over and over again in the scriptures. And here's what it's called. Fruit. That's the graphic. Fruit. Simple definition of fruit that we're going to use for this series. Fruit is this. It's the result or outcome of something. That's all it is. It's just the result or the outcome of something. And God created each of us to produce specific fruit in our lives. Fruit is the finished product. Everybody's familiar with that idea, right? Fruit is the finished product. But we spend so much of our time and energy and focus concentrating on fruit, don't we? Promotions, how much I weigh today, what number is in my bank account, right? That's all fruit, results, outcomes. But concentrating on the fruit doesn't make the fruit any better. Have you noticed that? Like, I can refresh the stock market all I want to. It doesn't make it go up or down. Anybody? We think we have powers, don't we? Or like if I make sure that I know about some particular thing and I can check it out and I just concentrate on the result, I miss out on the result that I actually want when I concentrate simply on results. Instead, here's what God wove into the universe. There's a process that we have to adhere to if we want to get the fruit that we want. There's always a process, but I get so focused on what the fruit is, what the outcome is. You're right, whatever it is, my weight, how much money our family has, how much Epic is growing or it isn't growing. That is fruit, 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 fruit. Instead, there are things that I need to concentrate on so that I get the fruit that I want. And we're going to talk a lot in this series because God's word says so much about fruit. The place I want to begin is Luke chapter 6. If you have a Bible on you, if you've got the Epic Church app, if you've got the Bible memorized, why don't you stand with me? There's just 3 verses I want to look at today. 3 verses to start with. This is Luke 6, 43 through 45. You guys, the implications are massive. You're going to discover from the words of Jesus today that there's a reason why there are certain things present in your life, and there's a reason why certain things remain absent in your life. Here's what he says, 43. No good tree bears bad fruit, nor does a bad tree bear good fruit. Each tree is recognized by its own fruit. People do not pick figs from thorn bushes or grapes from briars. A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. You guys, it's not a mystery. Have a seat. It's not a mystery. Jesus says a couple of things that just seem super obvious and like they aren't worth mentioning. Anybody? He says a good tree will not produce bad fruit. A bad tree will not produce good fruit. And even though most of us don't have an agricultural background, this makes a lot of sense to us, yes? Like, okay, I'm tracking. I get it. Anybody ever been to Napa Valley? Just kidding. I'm going to finish it. Has anybody ever been to Napa Valley and you've spent time listening to someone tell you about how the wine got from the beginning to where it is in the bottle today? Anybody? Raise your hands high. If not, you should do this. It's just fascinating. I'm sure you can YouTube it, but go do it in person for so many reasons. But when I've been in those settings and listened to those individuals talk about the process to get to the fruit, it's just crazy. They're like, we have to plant it in a certain place, and then they will tell you that a grape on this row is quite different actually than the grape that is produced on this row, and we have to have the watering system down to a science, a literal science, and the weather, if it gets too hot here, we've got to treat it. If it gets too cold in the wintertime, we have to treat it. There's this pruning process that's involved. There's so much that goes into it, but we just love the fruit. It's amazing to me, I don't know about you, but it's amazing to me that they have to do certain things in the winter season if they want to get maximum fruit in the harvest season. That's incredible, right? It's harvest season now, by the way. Don't leave yet. You've got time still to get there today. But I took a couple of pictures of some grape clusters just recently. I want you to see them. There's one, and then I think the next one's even more luscious. Boom. We love fruit. Anybody love fruit? And some of you are like, Ben, I want the next step. We'll talk about that later, okay? We know what the next step is. We're not doing, there's a whole process there too. That's not what we're doing on this Sunday morning. But yes, indeed. We love this, but if we don't think much about process, we just enjoy a ton of fruit in life, right? So we can enjoy this without knowing the process, without seeing the pruning, without realizing that someone at 2 a.m. in January, the alarm went off because the temperature got too low. They jumped out of bed, got in their truck, went and sprayed, right, all of the branches because they knew that it had reached a threshold that's not going to be good if you want to have great fruit when it comes to harvest season. They knew that. But we love fruit, but oftentimes we don't think about what goes into making the fruit fruit. Sundays at Epic, this is a great example of a fruit, right? This is fruit. And what I mean is this: if you just come in here on Sundays and you walk out the door, don't feel guilty. That's not what this is, just giving you a story, okay? That's all good. We created this church so that a lot of you could come in and go out, but you have no idea what it takes to pull a Sunday off because you just experience it as fruit. Does that make sense? So you have no idea that there's someone who's printing off kids' curriculum so that when your 6-year-old walks in one of those 6 classrooms, there's a lesson there. Someone else has made sure that your kid has Cheerios because we've seen your kid without getting his or her Cheerios. We don't want that on our hands, okay? Someone else has made sure that they're prepared to teach the lesson. That's just for your child, just for your 6-year-old. They get the fruit of that because someone does a ton into it. We have 100 people that are prepared to work every given Sunday. That's pretty crazy, isn't it? Just to pull off what we pull off. Someone orders the coffee here. Anybody grateful that the coffee gets ordered from Phil's Coffee? Anybody? If you're like, no, Ben, I want Starbucks. There's a different church for you. It's a super generic church. It's just your everyday church. That's for you. And then someone else shows up early on Sundays to brew the coffee. I know you're grateful for them. I know some of you are like, Ben, we love the coffee, but if you could give us a little more than a 3.5-ounce cup, we're just trying to keep it hot for you. Just go back as often as you need to. There's content that's created every week. You never see it. And some of you run into me at Phil's sometimes. Yes, Phil should pay for this church. Some of you do run into me there. I tend to write there as well as my office and other places. There's a ton of content creation. The band doesn't just show up at 10:30 and they're ready to jam. They've got songs. They've got chord charts, I think, or whatever that's called. They've got things that inform them so that they're ready to go. Our production, they're making sure that online, you guys are having a great experience right now. Come to the room. We're really friendly. But they're making sure that you have a great experience by making sure everything's processed the right way so that when you show up on a Sunday, fruit, and you can enjoy it, or you can be like, Pastor keeps trying to be funny. He's not that funny, but he got a few laughs today. Right? That's just all fruit. That's fruit. And we get so fixated on the fruit, but we oftentimes pretend like we can have the fruit without the process. More on that in a little bit. Jesus says a lot of obvious things, and one of the things he says that just seems so clear is this. He says, people do not pick figs from thorn bushes or grapes from briars, to which we're all like, right? Same in that setting. So why does Jesus waste his words, knowing that words are precious for a man who's only going to teach publicly for 3 years? Why does he waste his words? Because he wants us to understand something. Yes, we know what's true about trees and fruit, but he's saying to us, the same is true about your life and my life. Here's how I want to say it. I want you to get this principle. A tree can only produce what it actually is. The same is true for every one of us. Don't miss this. This is why Jesus is making the obvious statement. He wants you to know, yeah, you see that a thorn bush isn't going to produce figs, briars are not going to produce grapes. You need to know that in your life, you're not going to produce anything except what you are. But we keep having these lofty goals, right? I mean, we've got them framed on the walls. We've got them in big colors. We know how to do strategy sessions. We've hired a personal trainer. We haven't met him yet, but we have hired a personal trainer. Like, we know what needs to happen fruit-wise, but we forget that you can only actually produce what you are. You can only produce what you are. Here's the only difference between us and the trees, though. The trees don't spend all of their time and energy trying to appear to be something they're not. Let me say that again. I thought I'd be, true, Pastor. The trees don't spend all of their time and energy appearing to be something they aren't. Trees are terrible at disguising. Would you agree? Unfortunately, we've gotten really good at it for a season. But Ben, have you scrolled my Instagram? That is fruit. That is something fruity. Right? The only difference between us and the trees is that trees don't try to disguise who they actually are. It's obvious to us, right? Oh, that's an orange tree. Eventually, it's going to be obvious to everyone around you, if they're there long enough, exactly what you are. I've told this story before, but I love it. I think it makes the point. When I met Shauna's parents, I'd only been around her mom for a few days. But we're sitting at a meal, and her mom says to me, Ben, here's what she says, Ben, I'm sure you're not perfect, but it sure seems that way. I'm like, you're right. 18 and a half years later, not so much. But here's what she meant. She'd only been around me for like a couple of hours, and anybody can have good behavior for a couple of hours, right? Especially when you're meeting the one you're praying will be your future in-laws. I'm like, I can be good for a couple hours, right? But had she been around me all the time, she would have known that that's not 100% the fruit that's being produced in my life. Jesus says, whatever gets stored up in you is going to come out of you. Guys, I don't care how smart you are, you can't be different than this. I don't care how advanced you are. I don't care how many followers you have or what accolades you get or what it looks like when you're on the stage of your life, whether that's an actual stage that I'm on right now or whatever the platform is in your life. You might be able to fool people there, but the reality is this: whatever gets in you is going to come out of you. Always. We know that, right? We know that. So Jesus says, the good person brings good out of the good that's what? Stored up. And the bad person brings bad out of the bad that's stored up. So every person on planet Earth, which means every person in this room, everyone watching online right now, we are storing some things up. But then when it comes out in our lives, we're like, how did that get there? Anybody besides me? Anybody react a certain way and you're like, where did that come from? Yesterday I was playing basketball with my 3 sons. Me and the younger one, we lost the series, but that's beside the point. I'm not even sure why I'm telling this, but here we go. There were some teenagers that came up to the gym, and I'm like, oh, this might be trouble. So one throws the ball, and it hits me in the head. Because I'm a pastor, I was like turning the other cheek. Psych, I was not turning the other cheek. You're going to make fun of me in front of my kids? Anyway, I won't tell you what else happened, but just needed to confess that. Whatever's in us, right, is going to come out of us. I've got lots of rationale, but I will not justify it. I'm just saying. Jesus said, whatever's in you, Ben, and whatever's in you, and whatever's in you, and whatever's in you, it's going to come out. And while we're doing amazing goal-setting routines at work and at home and in our relationships and with our health and with our finances, we forget that there's a process involved. We just forget, and we just never seem to get there. I love what Proverbs 4:23 says about this. It says, above all else, which means we should listen. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Guard your heart, for everything you do flows from your heart. Be careful what you let in. But we take stuff in, and I know I've heard all of us justify it. We take stuff in, and we're like, but that won't affect my life. I'll watch that, I'll think about that, I'll fantasize about that, I'll spend my time doing that, but it'll have no outcome on my life. And that's just a lie. That is you trying to deceive yourself, but deception will not help you in the end, because whatever gets in you truthfully is coming out in your life. Everything in the scripture says that. Guard your heart. Why? Why? Because everything you do flows from it. So if everything in your life is flowing from your heart, how's your heart? How's your heart? Understand this principle. This is huge. Whatever consumes your heart will eventually come out in your life. Let me repeat it. You need to know this. I don't know how you spent your Saturday night. I don't know what season you're in your own life and work and relationships and mental health. I don't know what's going on. Here's what you have to know. Whatever consumes your heart will eventually come out in your life. Some of you, because it's not coming out yet, think you're safe. You are in the most danger of every person in this room. Anybody ever been there? This won't affect me. It's not going to come out. Anybody? 6 months later, sometimes it comes out. 2 years later. Anybody ever had that delay of coming out? Right? It's going to always come out in my life and in your life. So when we talk about the heart, what do we mean? When Scripture talks about the heart, the full definition or way to categorize it is this: it's the very center of a person. It's not just what we love. It's not just our emotions. A lot of us think about the heart in that way. It's actually the very center of what we are, of who we are. That's our heart. That is our heart. Heart can also mean this in the Scriptures: the place where God dwells. The place where God takes up residence inside of us, which is fascinating. If you think about whatever gets in me, in you, is going to come out of all of us, the place where God dwells. Let me ask you a question. Really want you to think about it. This is really, really important. Here it is. Is it possible that you are letting things into your life that are going to produce the exact opposite result that you desire? Is it possible you're receiving things into your lives that will actually produce the exact opposite result that you desire? Let me give you just 4 examples how this might happen. We want to have a close relationship with God. A lot of people talk about that. I talk about that. That's fruit. but we make time for everything else but God. That's the problem of process. Would you agree? There's something wrong with our process. So we go, God, I just want to be close to you. I want to be close to you, but we make no time and space for God. Guess what? We're never going to get to the fruit we say we desire. Some of you in your marriages, significant relationships with your romantic fiance, your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, you want to have this close, intimate, deeply committed relationship, but even when you're present, you're not present. They are open with you, but you've yet to be vulnerable with them. You're committed to them unless a better opportunity comes along. No, gosh, you didn't tell me to tell you that today. I'm just telling you because I know that's true for some of you. I want this great intimate relationship that's full of commitment, but I'm not adhering to the process that will bring it to me. Do you see where there's a disconnect? Think about when it comes to your vocations. A lot of us, right, with our vocations, I think we want to make a great difference in the world. So you want to make a great difference in the world through your work, but you just waste way too much time at work. Do you see the disconnect, right? But you're like, but Ben, I'm at the office 12 hours a day. I'm like, I know, but 6.5 of those are on Facebook. That don't count, man, right? Some of us know financial fruit we want to see in our lives. Yeah? We want to be well-positioned in the future, but we just can't stop spending in the present. Do you see the disconnect? I have no doubt that every man and woman and boy and girl in this room right now has a great picture of the fruit they want to see in their lives, but I have a lot of doubt about whether or not you're adhering to the process that God set up that's going to bring about the fruit in your life. That's why we're doing this series called Bring It Out. When you begin to understand the process of how fruit works, let me tell you the frustration that you will find yourself having. Fruit doesn't spring up overnight. Anybody wish it did besides me? Anybody wish you could think about losing 20 pounds one day and have it gone the next day? Anybody want to have an idea of starting a company one day and the company's fully formed and fully funded the next day? Right? I mean, we wish we could do that. I was with my friend Hope this week on the BART. She was showing me pictures of these amazing macaroons she loved to make. Like, I would do that if I could just snap my finger and get chocolate macaroons. I'm in. Right? I would do that. But there's a process, and here's what is happening in some of our lives. Because we don't have fruit showing up right now, we're tempted to bow out and give up and walk away, and you better stay with it if you want to see the fruit. Right? Here's what a lot of us do, because we're so used to everything being fast in our world, fruit doesn't spring up overnight. We're like, well, I'm done with that process. That didn't work. That's what we say, right? No, give it time. Let it work. Think about the vineyard worker in the winter, all right? Wintertime. There's no life on the tree, no life on the vine. The trees are barren. It's boring there. None of us go see branches in the winter, right? Like some of you are like, no, Ben, I go in the winter. No one's there. It's awesome. Right. There's a reason no one's there. It's boring. All you're doing each day is maybe spraying some things, observing some things, cutting back some branches, pruning, but it's boring. Why doesn't the worker at the vineyard give up during the heart of winter? Because, listen, that worker has something that all of us need. You know what that is? Vision. Let's see that second picture of the grapes again. Do you know why he doesn't give up in the winter, or she doesn't give up in the winter? Do you know why? Because they have an image in their mind. That's what a vision is, right? It's a picture of the future that you can't see with your the naked eye yet, but you can see with the eyes of vision and the eyes of faith. He keeps this, or she keeps this in mind. Why? Because if you get obsessed with an empty tree, there's nothing about that that's going to give you hope. But he or she knows, if I stick with it, that's what's coming around in August, September, and October. You know that? Some of you need to think about something in your life. This is what's waiting down the road in your August, your September, your October, and you're tempted to give up in this season. I want to tell you, please stay with it. Anybody? Stay with it. Ride it out. Persevere, and let God produce the fruit in your life that he wants to show up in your life. Paul loved the church at Ephesus, and he wrote a letter to the Ephesians. It's in the New Testament. And in chapter 3, he writes out a prayer for them. And the prayer is powerful, but I want to concentrate on verses 16 through 19. I want you to listen up to this. Paul writes, I pray that out of his glorious riches, he may strengthen you with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power together with all the Lord's holy people to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. 3 things I want to point out based on what we've learned today. Do you remember the thing we just talked about 5 minutes ago, that whatever gets in us is going to come out of us? How incredible that Paul has just told us that the Spirit of the living God can get in us. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? So if what comes in me is going to flow out of me, God himself can take up space in my inner being, then guess what comes out of my life? More of God. He says, I also pray this, that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. Another translation says it this way, that Christ may make his home in your heart through faith. Again, if Jesus can make his home in my heart and what goes in me is going to come out of me, then what's going to come out of me? It's a Sunday school answer. Yeah, exactly. It's amazing. And then this last part, he says that we can be filled with the measure of the fullness of God. Isn't that incredible? This next principle is just for some of you today. While God is offering to completely fill our lives, too many of us are satisfied with a few drops of God in our lives. While God is offering to completely fill our lives, too many of us are satisfied with a few drops of God. So here's God's offer. He's like, you can be filled to the measure with the fullness of God. You don't have to earn it, you just have to make space for it. You don't have to create it, you just have to pay attention to it. You don't have to work for it, you just have to make sure that there's space in your life for him to come in and to fill you. While God is offering to completely fill our lives, so many of us in this room and watching online right now are right here. God's like, you can have this, and we're going, I'm good. I'm good. God's like, but you're in the desert. And we're like, yeah, I'm pretty awesome. I just needed a little bit to wet the back of my throat. God, this is going to do it. And what we do, guys, it's not just that we leave it empty and there's just a little bit of God, is that every heart is storing up something and we fill it with so many other things. And God's going, hey, I want to come in and make my home here. I want to fill you with my Spirit in your inner being. I want you to be filled with the full measure of God. And we're like, no, man. God, I made it to church 7 times last year. We're good. We're good. He's offering us everything, and you and I are going, fine. How sad. And this has been me at times. All right? God, I spent 5 minutes. And this isn't about stopping what we're doing and reading the Bible and praying for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's about inviting God into every space that we inhabit. Listen, at your job, do you want the fullness of God or just a drop? Well, Ben, you don't know what I do. Well, that's between you and God. In your relationships, fullness of God? When it comes to your character traits, whatever gets in you, whatever gets in you, it's going to come out of you. So what's in you? And is there anybody in the room who wishes there were perhaps some different things in you? Because now you know that what got in you is coming out of you. And that alone will determine whether you and I produce the kind of fruit that God created us to produce during our time on this earth. I want to give you a couple of responses that might be possible based on who you are and where you are today. The first one is this: if you've never trusted Jesus by giving your life to him, here's the invitation. Invite Jesus to make his home in your heart today. Invite Jesus to literally make his home in your heart today. In fact, we want to help you do that. So text the word BEGIN to 313131. I've already recorded a video. There's other stuff that our team's put together. You'll just get a text message every other day or so. Here's how it looks for Jesus to make his home in your heart. But for the rest of us who would say, at some point in our lives at least, we've been people with faith in Jesus, but Ben, right now, exactly what you said, I'm just settling for a drop of it. Somebody once said that you and I have as much of God as we actually want. It's not a mystery. It's not a mystery if this much of God gets into our lives while not a whole lot comes out. Would you agree? So for those of us with faith, maybe our prayer would be this: ask God to completely fill your life with his fullness. Like, Ben, that's a lot of words, seem to mean the same thing, but that's the idea that Paul has there. So completely fill his fullness. It's available to you. It's available to me. But after all, it's not a mystery. What's coming out in your life, there's a really good reason for it. Maybe it's time to change the process, the inputs. There are things that are absent in our lives that we long to be present. There are things that are present in our lives that we really wish were absent. I think God probably feels the same way. But today is about hope. It's about understanding what is going to lead to the fruit that I desire and God desires for my life, and then being willing to do whatever it takes doing so that that gets produced. Would you pray with me? God, thank you for this principle. God, thank you that you have wired each of us, God. You've set the universe up. God, what's true up north in the vineyards today is true in every life in this room. For the ultimate and maximum fruit to be produced in our lives, there's a process. It's about the inputs, about what comes into our hearts. It's about what gets into our lives. And God, today I pray that we would just see the disconnect between what we long to see produced and what's the process currently in our lives towards that fruit being produced. God, I pray that you would give us the grace we need to see this for what it is and the grace to change what needs to be changed. God, would you fill us? Would you make your heart in us today? In Jesus' name, amen.